This is the Dollemore Daily, and I'm Jesse Dollemore.
So I get a lot of pushback for the names that I call people, leaders of our country. I get accused by both people who are subscribers and, I think, appreciators of my content, but also a lot of pushback from MAGA morons that he just calls names. There's no substance to what he's saying. And that's just nonsense. Look, a little bit of ad hominem now and then to spice things up is fine as long as I'm actually making a substantive argument. Well, today's video has to do with just what kind of a racist dumb Donald Trump truly is. There's a guy out there who's making the rounds right now in the media named Miles Taylor, who is a former chief of staff for Kirstjen Nielsen, the former head of the Department of Homeland Security, and an advisor to disgraced Marine John Kelly, also former head of the DHS. And he's making the rounds right now because he just endorsed Joe Biden. A couple of things on that. One is, this guy still worked for Donald Trump in a capacity that harmed human beings. He presided over an administration that gassed immigrants at the border. So, look, I'm not a giant fan. He's not a good guy. Great, I'm glad if he's able to sway some Republicans to oust Donald Trump from office. That's great. But I'm not going to be singing this guy's praises. Well, he just made the claim that has been made before relative to Donald Trump's obsession with obtaining Greenland as a territory of the United States, that he actually wanted to trade Puerto Rico for Greenland. And I'm going to play the clip, but I want to remind everybody how Donald Trump reacted in the aftermath of Hurricane Maria that killed almost 3,000 Americans. And the word Americans there is very key because it's lost on a lot of MAGA Americans that Puerto Ricans are Americans. It's not some distant, far-off foreign country, some land that we can ignore. They are our brothers and sisters in Puerto Rico. And just like what we're witnessing right now and experiencing right now with COVID, there were astronomically, the death toll was astronomically higher in Puerto Rico because of Donald Trump's inaction. Because of lack of a plan and fumbling around in the dark trying to find whatever organ that he's not accustomed to dealing with. I don't know. There was real suffering, real death as a result of Donald Trump's racism and stupidity and abject fecklessness. I did several videos on this during the time. If you'd like a refresher, if you'd like a reminder of how bad things were, go back and look at some of these videos. Just search my name and Puerto Rico. Also, in the aftermath, we witnessed cronyism run amok, where two-person companies were given $300 million contracts, third of $1 billion contracts given to a company run by two ding-dongs who couldn't get the job done, who didn't have the ability, technically or business-wise, to scale to get power back to Puerto Rico. And therein lies the tragedy where thousands of people died for lack of power. Anyway, remember some of the moments from Donald Trump, given to us by Donald Trump in the aftermath of Hurricane Maria. Tossing paper towels like a maniac, like it's some kind of an arcade game. How about this one?
Mick Mulvaney is here, right there, and Mick is in charge of a thing called budget. Now, I hate to tell you, Puerto Rico, but you've thrown our budget a little out of whack because we've spent a lot of money on Puerto Rico, and that's fine. We've saved a lot of lives. If you look at the, every death is a horror, but if you look at a real catastrophe like Katrina, and you look at the tremendous hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that died.
Whining about how much money Puerto Rico is costing the United States as though they're not Americans. He didn't act like that with the hurricane that took place in, I think it was Harvey, in Houston. No, it was pull out all the stops. Let's help them. Disgusting. It's not a real catastrophe like Katrina was. Not a real catastrophe. Sociopathic is that response. And then also, who could forget the moment where he's making excuses for the slow, ineffectual response by claiming that, it's a bunch of water.
Because this is an island surrounded by water, big water, ocean water.
Big water, ocean water. Dangerous. So anyway, let's get to this. Let's get to this interview with Hallie Jackson from MSNBC, where she's asking the question, like, what are some other things that you remember that really stuck out in your mind as being beyond the pale for a sitting president of the United States with the power to help and hurt? Then this is how the exchange went down.
You describe a number of incidents that you found extremely problematic, including, for example, I know you've talked about this publicly, the protests, for example, where parks were cleared. You talk about gassing, tear gas at the border, et cetera. I'm wondering, what is the most, in the conversations you were involved in, disturbing idea or thought or discussion that you heard from President Trump that is sort of resonating and sitting with you still today?
We could probably go on for days about that. Although I'm going to tell you one thing that just popped into my head, Hallie. There was a time when, of course, we were spending a lot of our days down in Puerto Rico after the hurricanes wreaked devastation down there, U.S. Virgin Islands, and other places. There was a trip that we made down there in August of 2018, and I remember before we went, the president said something, and your viewers are going to be somewhat familiar with this. The president's talked before about wanting to purchase Greenland. But one time before we went down, he told us not only did he want to purchase Greenland, he actually said he wanted to see if we could sell Puerto Rico. Could we swap Puerto Rico for Greenland? Because in his words, Puerto Rico was dirty and the people were poor. These are Americans, Hallie. And we don't talk about our fellow Americans that way. And the fact that the President of the United States wanted to take a U.S. territory of Americans and swap it for a foreign country is beyond galling. But this was a real thing. This is the President. This is the man who sits behind the Resolute desk. And these are the thoughts he has when Americans are in danger and recovering. I did not take it as a joke. And on multiple occasions, the president expressed interest in buying Greenland. And I'll go even further about Puerto Rico. The president expressed deep animus towards the Puerto Rican people behind the scenes. These are people who were recovering from the worst disaster of their lifetimes. He is their president. He should be standing by them, not trying to sell them off to a foreign country.
Puerto Rico is dirty and its people are poor. Shithole countries? Anybody ringing a bell? Absolutely this happened. To deny that this happened ignores the almost 4 years that we've had Donald Trump as president of this country. It ignores his past behavior. It ignores his obvious, apparent attitudes toward people of color, people who are otherized by him. And his response in the aftermath is still being felt today by Puerto Rico. Reading from NBC, so far, the federal government has allocated nearly $46 billion to help the island recover from its multiple disasters. But most of the money, specifically funds for housing and infrastructure relief, have not made their way to the communities on the island. Puerto Rico has received only nearly $17 billion, according to the Federal Emergency Management Agency's Recovery Support Function Leadership Group. Last month, the FEMA administrator, Pete Gaynor, acknowledged that the Puerto Rican island of Vieques still doesn't have a functioning hospital, while thousands of other Puerto Ricans continue to wait for their homes to be rebuilt almost 3 years after Hurricane Maria. In a 2018 after-action report, FEMA also acknowledged agency failures in areas like staffing and coordination. The Department of Housing and Urban Development allocated historic amounts of funding for the island in the areas of housing, infrastructure, and energy. Close to $20 billion. Puerto Rico has received less than 8% of that money so far. Less than 8%. I've said in the past that Puerto Rico, the disaster in Puerto Rico, this heartbreaking disaster in Puerto Rico, is Donald Trump's 9/11. Now we can say that COVID-19 is an even greater 9/11 for Donald Trump. He's had several, it seems, because of his ineffectual leadership, his hatred for black and brown people. They're dirty. It's poor. Let's trade it for Greenland, which was never an option. His obsession with making America more white, in his eyes, making it great again, harms people. This is disgusting. This is impeachable. He is not fit. It's time to remove Donald Trump as president of the United States. And we have our opportunity in November. And everybody needs to get out there. If you're eligible to vote, make sure you're registered. Make certain that you're registered. Have a plan. Whether you're going to do mail-in, absentee, whether you're going to do it that way, whether you're going to get out to the polls and actually wait in line. Ensure that your family is ready to vote. Lives are on the line. Your life, in fact, is on the line. Anyway, that is it. I didn't even plan on doing a video today, but this was just too alarming to not address. I'd love to know what you think. 714-576-4054. Of course, you can always email me, daily@dollemore.com. I'd love to hear from you. Let me know what your plan is for voting. Who are you going to charge with going out to vote with you? Who are you going to convince that may not have otherwise done it? If all of us take it upon ourselves to get 2 or 3 more people than just us to vote, this thing's in the bag. I would also ask you to consider becoming a channel member here on YouTube. For fewer than $2 a month, you can help support independent media voices like mine. If I'm not the independent media voice that you appreciate as much as others, go support those other people. Look, I'm not for everybody. I get it. But I would appreciate your support. Just consider it. Anyway, I love you guys. I appreciate you. Please stay genuine. Take care of one another.